Welcome to the Pubway podcast. Each episode will showcase a conversation with a leader from the publishing world. If you're working at a publisher, a DSP or SSP, or you're just curious about the media industry and want to sit down and pick the brains of the experts from within the publishing space, then this is the show for you.
The Pubway podcast. I'm Mike Villalobos, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the evolution and role of the SSP and the AdTech ecosystem. But before we do, I think it's fair to call out that today I am running solo as Tina has recently left on maternity leave and currently has the third co-host of our podcast hanging out at home. But with that being said, it is my esteemed pleasure to introduce our next guest, Jessica Breslav, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Index Exchange. Hi, Jessica. How are you today?
Hey there. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. And as the Chief Customer Officer in Index Exchange, we'd love to have a kind of a quick introduction into what your roles and responsibilities are and what your remit means.
Sure, absolutely. So maybe taking a step back first, Index, if you're not aware, is one of the world's largest independent ad exchanges. And our purpose is to enable media owners to grow revenue and marketers to reach consumers on any screen across any format. And so my role is entirely customer and operations focused. And so I oversee our commercial and operations teams globally.
Sure.
And our purpose is to be obsessed with customer success, making sure our publishers are happy and healthy and growing.
I love it. And I feel like more oftentimes than not, the publisher side tends to get forgotten a little bit. So I love to hear the commitment to the end user and customer, for rather being the publisher. And you guys have been around since 2001, correct? It's been quite some time.
Yep. Index has a long history in the AdTech ecosystem and are going incredibly strong.
Love it. And I mean, look, you've seen every iteration of AdTech, both good and bad, I'm sure. How have you seen the SSP evolve over the last few years, right? From 2001 now to 2024. I mean, that's almost a quarter of a decade or a quarter of a century, right? Like, what changed and what do you feel is kind of coming down the pike in the next, 25 years, if you will?
Oh my goodness, the next 20 years. Very long time. Well, listen, I would say even if we were to look at the evolution of the SSP space over just the last 12 months, we've seen an incredible shift. And it's been really exciting to be a part of the change. I'd start by saying that automation is absolutely critical. And there's just such a focus on efficiency and driving performance, both on the buy side and the publisher side of the ecosystem. Beyond that, there is so much scrutiny around transparency and control,
of course,
which in many ways is the DNA of Index Exchange. It's been a cornerstone of how we think about our business, how we take care of our customers, our publishers, and is something that really lives within everything that we do. And, the other thing I would say, and for me, I feel like this is really interesting, is a lot of discussions in the marketplace, especially across the last, let's call it 6 months, around where value creation lives in our ecosystem.
Sure.
Lots of articles I'm sure you've seen and read about curation and what that means and how that comes together. And in my mind, it is really a much bigger discussion around value creation and where that lives and really how publishers can be incredibly empowered to enjoy some of that value creation.
That's fair. And when you look at the value creation, what are some of the key tenets that you look for to provide for the publisher side? And do you feel that the value creation needs to be two-pronged, go only for publisher and brand side, or only just publisher for Index Exchange, being that that's the core focus for you guys?
I think that there is absolutely a balance in terms of creating value across the ecosystem. When you think about publishers, their focus is very much about maximizing revenue. And that's what we as an SSP really obsess over in terms of helping our publishers to realize. DSPs are very focused on buying inventory at optimal prices and driving effective campaigns.
Yep.
The analogy that I often use is kind of the real estate analogy, right?
Okay.
If you're buying a house, if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, you would never use the same agent to help broker both sides of that equation.
True.
We see our ecosystem being exactly the same. And so that's why we feel it's really important for us to represent the publisher wholly, allow the DSPs to represent the buyer, and to be really strategic partners in that relationship and driving success across the entire value chain.
I love that. And kind of going back to how the publisher side can leverage itself towards monetizing better in front of the advertiser. What are some of the reasons why you feel that publishers especially have gained a little bit more power, if you will, or within that dynamic? And how can they leverage that in conversations with advertisers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there's an incredible opportunity for publishers to not only address buyers, but recognize the power that they do have
Sure.
in driving outcomes. And so, the first I'd say, if you think about our ecosystem and what's evolved over the last year, premium inventory is critical, right? Brands are attracted to really valuable audiences. Advertisers need to avoid fraud. They want to avoid poor quality. And so premium inventory is absolutely required,
Agreed.
not a nice to have anymore. And so that certainly puts publishers in a position of power. The other thing I'd say that I have found really exciting to watch across the exchange is that, publishers are more and more finding ways to create new value within the supply chain and optimize and bring in new revenue strategies. And so whether it's through new formats like video or streaming, which allow them to get a lot more scale, or thinking about new optimization strategies, I've seen a lot of publishers really transform over the last year, and that's been exciting to watch. And buyers like that, right? They want more scale. And so it is an equation that works really well together.
I love that. And you mentioned this earlier about around automation and how that plays within the SSP process. How have you guys leveraged automation in the past? And honestly, even best practices from folks that you've seen within the publisher network that you guys work with?
Yeah, for sure. I'd start by saying that automation touches every single facet of our business,
Yeah.
whether it's real-time bidding or audience segmentation or how we think about deals or fraud detection or reporting.
Yep.
Automation is ingrained within literally every single aspect of what we do. And the output of that is it really allows us to enhance efficiency and yield and, of course, user experience. And so those things combined, I think, have created a lot of scale across the platform, which is something that Index is incredibly proud of. It also allows for a lot of transparency. And that is something that both buyers and publishers need to have.
Yeah.
You can measure and look at every single transaction that happens across Index Exchange. And that is a really important aspect of understanding what's happening with media dollars and how you drive performance.
That is probably one of the biggest call outs is how to find that transparency. Are there any tactical things you would advise someone in that vein, right? Because one thing that's come up quite a bit within our publisher network and generally speaking with publishers is they're using automation around content creation, ways to edit better, ways to create kind of different deviations of, some of the content. Do you find that's being used within your publisher network? But also, and this goes back to the quality check or the QA, if you will, of premium, does that affect the premium nature because automation is now being applied to the content, which is pretty subjective?
Yeah, so I think my mind kind of goes in a few different areas with this question. I think the first one might be around using measurement to improve performance. And so real-time analytics or yield optimization tools in full transparency give publishers insights to key metrics like eCPM or fill rates or revenue performance. And that allows them in real time to kind of think about how they want to optimize their campaigns and drive better ROI. So that's really important. And so, focusing on data-driven decision-making and enabling real-time adjustments through automated reporting and insights is just something that's so critical in helping advertisers, buyers, and publishers kind of come together. And so I think for me, that's kind of the first place that my head goes when you ask that question.
I love that. I mean, that's a great answer, honestly. It really is fortifying the relationship between the buyer and the seller. Curious to get your take on how do you see the SSP balancing, right? You mentioned the broker example within real estate, which honestly, I'm going to steal that from you. But the broker example is great. But as the SSP, you're playing a bit of the middleman. So you're almost placating to both sides. How have you addressed the needs of both a publisher and also the DSPs and advertisers to make sure you're striking that, that really good relationship or facilitating the transparency that you're mentioning?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would say is we see ourselves as a representative of a publisher. And we partner really closely with DSPs. But I think in terms of in the middle, we don't really see ourselves in the middle, right? We see ourselves firmly footed on the behalf of the publisher. And I love that. It's something that's differentiating, I think, about Index and has really allowed our publishers to thrive and to be successful. The balance in that, in my mind, is really about benchmarks and standards.
Yeah.
Right. Index has been a very, very avid proponent of introducing standards into the market. And so RTB 2.6 is an example. We talk a lot about sellers.json. We're active in their development, their adoption, their implementation.
Oh, interesting.
They're implemented into or integrated into our platform, which gives a lot of transparency in the ecosystem. And the reason that I think benchmarks and standards are so important is that if we are all looking at the same KPIs or the same measurements, then it's a lot easier to understand in a more efficient, more transparent way what performance looks like. And you can have different KPIs. Publishers can have a different set of KPIs than a buyer. But if we're adopting standards, then we're playing on a very equal playing field.
I could not agree more with you.
Nice.
I first started my AdTech journey, if you will, probably it's been 17 years now ago. And when I first started learning the acronyms, the alphabet soup that's out there, I was like, what is
I'm
what?
still learning it.
Yeah, I was like, what is what? Like, there's no standard here. Everyone follows different rules. Like, for example, back in the day when it was like completed views, a deemed completed view was 3 seconds, 7 seconds, 10 seconds, and 15 seconds. I'm like, someone just please tell me what it is. So I agree with the standardization of that.
Yeah, this is why standards matter so much.
Oh, 100%. What do you think the most important benchmarks are for a publisher, whether it's a publisher who's maybe a legacy, who already has its roots built out, or someone who's just starting out, right? Like, what do you think are the most important benchmarks for success when looking into the growth of the company?
I think it really depends on the publisher. We talked a little bit about different KPIs like CPM. We talked about fill rates. We talked about revenue performance. But at the end of the day, we've seen publishers across the ecosystem really trying to stretch and navigate into potentially new channels or looking at new opportunities or new formats. And so I think being really open-minded but data-driven about what success looks like and, the path that a publisher wants to achieve and then navigating that path is probably the best way to do that. And, that's a big part of what my team does every single day. Leading the commercial organization, we've got expert account management teams who are there to talk about not just how to improve publisher monetization strategies, but also to share what's new and what's innovative and how we're able to help our publishers really see the world around them. It's one of my favorite parts of the job.
And as you're doing that with the publisher side and the account management team, are there any standards that you've set in place to unify the demand side with the supply that you're like, okay, these are things that we're going to recommend to our publishers, mainly because we want to make sure that they're connect. There's like a conduit to the demand side, and this is going to be the benchmark for both.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that we've done really well this year is brought our buyers and publishers much closer together. And so my commercial team is focused on supporting our publishers, but we also have team members that support our holdcos and also the DSPs. And part of what we've done this year is we've really been able to create an active dialogue and conversation where, publishers are coming into our office every single week and they're talking about their supply and what they do and their business models and how we can package supply, like deals, for example, for buyers specifically. And creating those connections, I think, has been not so much a benchmark or a standard, but showcases the importance of relationship building
Curation.
and dialogue and, bringing people together, because we are still very much a relationship business. And where we've been able to help publishers achieve some of those introductions, we've seen some pretty exciting results.
And I saw you guys, I saw this maybe back in January, but it was, you guys released a little presser around the importance of curation. And I think that's really important to call out, right? Because part of this relationship building is I can't curate unless you tell me what you need or what you want. And that preference does matter, because that's to your exact point earlier of what does quality or premium mean? That curation process could be a lot of different things, right? So
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I guess when we're looking to improve the performance and the measurement of our partnerships with the publishers, what does Index Exchange do for them? Outside, obviously, the expert account management, love that. But are there any like tools that you offer to the publishers to help them improve any of those measurement and performance challenges that they may be facing?
Yeah, I mean, I have heard from many of our customers that we have the best troubleshooting tools in the market.
Love to hear it.
And so there is a ton of capability, and we've really worked to build a UI, reporting, and tools that allow customers to be as self-sufficient as they'd like.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times being able to access information about performance or campaigns is really critical. And so we've made it our mission. Our company is an engineering first company. We have more engineers in this company than we do commercial or any other people. And I think that's really important to why our product is so sound and the velocity that we're able to build and release. And so the capabilities within our platform are real time and really do give all of our customers really great access to understanding performance. And then the commercial team is kind of an added layer to that.
I love that. Well, I kind of want to switch gears here into more of the bigger picture, if you will. So in 2024 started, cookies are being deprecated. Obviously, they got rolled back. Google wasn't under pressure from legislation yet. There was a lot of things that we just didn't see coming. When 2024 started, what were some predictions that you had at the beginning of the year, and what were some that actually held true, and others that you're like, oh, didn't see that?
I think we had really clear colored glasses going into 2024 and made some important investments that have helped to drive Index forward, but also have helped to drive our customers forward.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I'd say the impact of the deprecation of third-party cookies. We all know Google changed course. We're waiting details on their new user choice plan. We did not stop developing, and we have met all of the commitments that we said we would in terms of testing topics and privacy sandbox. We felt that that was really important, and it's something that we've continued to encourage publishers to navigate. I think that there is certainly an ask for buyers to lean in and to help kind of complete the circle there. I hear that from publishers a lot.
Yeah.
That continues to be something that is at the forefront of our thinking, and certainly not something that we're putting to bed in 24. It's something we'll probably think about going into 25 as well. We built a massive streaming business within Index, and there was a lot of really exciting innovation that we were able to participate in over the course of 24. And so, whether we were thinking about video or we were thinking about streaming and what that looks like, we've been a really active participant in the market in that sense. And that's been, an exciting one that we really invested in. And I think I'd be remiss not to mention just the industry-wide push for safety and quality and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
We were quite loud in the market about excluding MFA from our range. Yeah, we do not allow MFA. We have a team of people and technology that work in partnership to constantly review and scour the exchange to ensure that the premium publishers on the exchange are the ones who are receiving those media dollars. And the last one I'd say is sustainability, right? There's been a lot of conversation about sustainability as well.
And we'll touch on a lot of these as we go forward in the conversation, which I'm ecstatic about. But really quickly, a little bit of a tangent, but how do you guys define MFA? Because obviously there's the standard of what's been released, but do you guys define it differently? And do you find that it's kind of evolved since you've made that definition?
Yeah, I think the definition is definitely evolving. And I think one of the challenges that the industry has had is that there is no standard definition by which to apply. And so we have done our homework in aligning with IAB. We've done our own version of analysis. We've looked at best practices across the industry and have come up with a compilation of what we believe constitutes a definition for MFA. That said, we have a team of people and we have tools every single day that are reviewing guidelines. They look every single piece of content, every ad, every publisher that makes its way onto the exchange to ensure that as this is evolving, we are evolving with it.
Amazing. And it's refreshing to hear that you're ahead of the curve, because oftentimes people will roll out a solution or a process and kind of set it and forget it. And it's like, and that's how bad actors always arise, because people will always find a way. And if not for nothing, it's always going to be in advertising.
It's a position that we took much earlier in the year, and it's something that we're all really incredibly proud of. It's so important in terms of the growth of our premium publishers across the ecosystem, for sure.
Well, it maintains the integrity of the exchange, right? You just don't want to compromise that. So
high quality.
Exactly. As you look at 2025, we are going to put you on record. Just kidding. What do you see as the prediction? Maybe 2 or 3 that, like, maybe 2 conservative, maybe 1 hot take of what you think is going to happen next year.
Okay. Let's see. I'll do my best.
Okay.
Well, I would start by saying that I think the landscape will definitely be marked by innovation and disruption.
Okay.
Brands are going to require tech companies to stay agile and forward-thinking to succeed. And in my mind, that creates a really exciting opportunity for new things and cool stuff and innovation. And so I'm pretty excited about where we are as an industry. There's a lot to dig into.
Yeah.
If I were to give you just a couple kind of quick themes, I think CTV and streaming platforms are going to be a big topic in 25 and continued. Sustainability, absolutely a big conversation. You know, it's not a trend. It's fundamental to how businesses operate and envision their future.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the part that I'm really excited about is this idea around value creation and where that lives in the ecosystem and how publishers can become more empowered and what that looks like.
I love that. Let's actually dive a little bit deeper into sustainability, because you brought this up, I think, 2 or 3 times. And I've heard this from a few vendors of how they measure sustainability. One of my biggest peeves, I will admit, is people are performative in a lot of solutions, in the sense that we're going to measure a campaign, the campaign only. Well, do you not take into account the ad serving? You know, take into account the data processing? There's so much that goes into the actual sustainability part of it. I think there was a stat that I read recently where for every query that you send through ChatGPT, for example, that's 16 ounces of water, because of the need to actually cool the ads or the servers down, right? So just that in mind, and we're serving billions of QPS, millions of impressions a day. Like, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. So how can the SSP address sustainability, and how does Index Exchange involve itself in those initiatives?
Yeah, I think all the stats and feelings that you just mentioned are super real. I kind of felt them too when
Maybe it's like California vibes. I don't know.
When we first started really thinking about what sustainability meant and how we could reduce our carbon footprint as an SSP, like, there were just a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And our CMO, Lori Good, has been a fierce advocate and has really stepped into the arena to help guide us in terms of what our position looks like. And so you could do a podcast with her on sustainability. We could fill the whole 30 minutes.
Let's do it.
But I can certainly give you a little bit of insight into how we approached it. The first was when we recognized that sustainability was here to stay and that it was truly fundamental to how companies were thinking about their future. We just did a lot of homework. We started gathering info. We joined different industry bodies. We broadened our network. And then we pulled a team together that was really focused in, I'd say, like, auditing our current status and really thinking about what that looks like. I think commitments are really important. And so we identified 5 pillars that were areas that we would try to work on and solve, not overnight, but over time. And so data centers, product and technology, industry collaboration, operations, and employee support were the categories that we're really focused on. And there's different actions, I'd say, that we've taken as an SSP that have absolutely translated to helping customers to be more green or more sustainable. And so a couple of those actions, the first is that we have been, fierce advocates of eliminating duplicative supply. And so if you think about fewer hops, what that means is fewer auctions for the same ad slot,
Yeah.
which means we're
Less tax.
eliminating waste, we're reducing costs for buyers. And so that's kind of an immediate action that we've taken as an SSP. And we stand really firm that everybody should be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we've done that I think has really benefited both buyers and publishers is that we've built longstanding partnerships with companies like Scope3 as an example. Buyers can curate green deals, publishers are able to become green certified. And so for all of those reasons, I think that we've got a really nice strategy that's coming together. There's still work for us to do, but I'm excited about the approach that we have. And I think we're really helping buyers and publishers to make the progress that they're looking for.
And I think a part of that also goes into the educational piece, because it's so easy for us to kind of put it to the wayside, no pun intended, with sustainability, but to really just go on with our day-to-day. So would love to hear how you folks are educating clients. Like, what role do you play within education? And that'll lead to a broader question I have. But I think most importantly, how do you roll that into the educational piece without, pointing a finger at someone or a partner or a vendor?
Yeah, of course. So we absolutely see our position in the ecosystem as a thought leader and as an educator, and we take it really seriously. There's a lot of different ways that it comes together. I'd say thinking about like the ecosystem at large or AdTech at large, we've put out a lot of really helpful information. It comes in the form of something we call Index Explains. And so
I love
we
that.
create videos and content that really give publishers and buyers or anyone who's interested in the ecosystem really direct, clear information around different trends. And it could be around privacy, or it could be around PG, or it could be around deals, or it could be around sustainability.
Amazing.
There's a long list of where we've provided thought leadership there. We participate in, providing industry insights. We offer guides and documentation. And then, of course, my team is there too to help educate clients on a one-to-one basis. So whether it's thinking about different revenue strategies or how to help our customers grow, given some of the changes that are happening, we're really focused and doing all of those things.
I honestly love that. And the Index Explains, I'm going to go to your site now and do that.
You should.
I might I may force some of my coworkers to learn more about it as well, just because the publisher side, I feel like sometimes isn't as learned about or as focused on. So I'm going to exercise that one.
I think you'll be impressed.
I'm already impressed by you, so I have no doubt that I'll be impressed by that. In the spirit of education as well, like, how do you help publishers face the challenges in a privacy-first ad tech ecosystem without sacrificing revenue? I mean, obviously, I always say this, we're a pro team, not for fun team. So what are we doing to make money? But how do you mitigate the loss of revenue in this privacy ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that comes up a lot in discussions that I have with publishers. And so I think maybe the first place I'd start is that we as a company have been really proactive in adopting to a privacy first landscape, right? And ensuring that publishers can continue to maximize their revenue in that ecosystem. And so the example I'd use is our adoption of privacy first standards like Privacy Sandbox. And, we made the commitment that we would develop, that we would test, that we would work through, we would bring publishers along the journey to test things like topics and, have continued to do that. And so that's probably the first thing I would say. There's other things that we've done in terms of helping customers to understand, how contextual targeting can help reach more relevant audiences. And, we are agnostic in terms of working with clean rooms, but we certainly partner with many to help our publishers to achieve a privacy first approach. And so I guess to kind of summarize a few different points, it's just really about providing publishers with the tools, with the reporting, and then the insights to help them to be successful.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I would add is we are a global company with an absolutely stellar, best-in-class data privacy team. And so we have people here who spend all day, every day, really thinking about how to comply with new regulations, how to think about running a global business and what those implications are, and then making sure that that information as it relates to privacy and data protection laws are available to our customers. And so it's a service that we take really seriously. And I think we've been really successful in doing that.
That's inspiring to hear, because I feel like there's so much that is opaque when it comes to the release of these legislations. But I guess the same coin, different side, because with every data privacy law, there's also just data being used. Have you seen the use of data change for better or for worse? I mean, it could be also what you've seen in the ecosystem as well, that maybe some bad actors have done where you're like, that's something we're not going to do, but we have to acknowledge the fact that that's happening.
Yeah. I think everybody would agree that the use of data has definitely changed.
Yeah.
It's certainly changed for targeting over the years, and addressability in some ways is probably a good reason for the use of that data to change. Or the use of data to change. Deprecation of third-party cookies is also another one, right? It's like increased the use of first-party data due to privacy regulations. And so as consumers are demanding more transparency, like you've just mentioned, the usage of data, I think, certainly shifts and changes. I think maybe you alluded a little bit to AI and potentially machine learning and what that means.
Yep.
It's definitely accelerated the use of data. Again, our perspective is that when used correctly, it is a really incredible way to augment and to grow.
Correct.
But it's also created a place where our exchange quality team has had to really increase their chops and make sure from a protection perspective that, we're up to date on all of the latest trends. And so I would say that, publishers more specifically are really embracing this type of ownership and how they can leverage their own first party data and what that means, and creating partnerships and maybe new ways to innovate across broader audiences.
You got to love when you see people be fast adopters or folks be fast adopters, mainly because of the fact that change does scare a lot of people, especially with the generative component of AI, because of the fact that it could displace certain parts of the function for the publisher. But I think, to your point, if augmented and used correctly, it's an extremely powerful tool.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to kind of pin and go into the tailing thoughts of the interview. To be honest, this has been illuminating in so many different ways. I appreciate you for taking the time today. But shifting gears into more of a personal question, what's on your bookshelf? We love asking this to our folks that come on the podcast, mainly because we've gotten some quirky answers from sci-fi through to just typical nerdy reads. Whatever you have there, would love to hear it.
Well, this is a funny question. What I could tell you is today my bookshelf is filled with many books that my 13-year-old is supposed to be reading. He is not an avid reader. And I find the best way for me to get him to read is to read alongside him. And so, so I'm very familiar with that 8th grade reading list these days.
Little Goosebumps, maybe little Animorphs. I don't know. I'm showing my age clearly, but
that's more like 6th grade. That's what my bookshelf looked like a couple years ago.
That's fair. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we may have to bring your CMO on for the sustainability conversation, and we'll throw in some vendors in there too to make it spicy.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you, and again, really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Pubway Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review. To see all the show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, head on over to thepubwaypodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by Seedtag, the world's leading contextual advertising company. Contextual intelligence allows you to engage with consumers within their universe of interest on a cookie-free basis. By delivering ads into content, we capture users' attention faster and retain it longer. Learn more and reach out to us at seedtag.com.